All right, welcome. Thank you very much, April, for a brilliant presentation about our integrations. I think as they are today, I'm here with something a little bit different, maybe more of a forward-facing view on where we're going with our integrations. Next, for anyone who hasn't met me before, I'm Craig Williamson. I've been at IDBS quite a long time now, the last 4 years within the product and strategy organization, and most of that time with some degree of responsibility around our platform integrations as a whole. There is going to be future-facing statements in this presentation, so you've probably seen this a few times today, but just a reminder, this is all presented in the context of this conference, confidential information. Please do not share it, and don't make any purchasing decisions on what I'm about to say. We all okay with that? Very good. All right, so a quick review of what do integrations on the Polar platform look like right now today. It's a really broad topic, and for convenience, we tend to maybe break this down into some different sub-areas, which functionally we can address in different ways, but also just keeps it simple when we're talking about this. So the first one, data in, which is going to be the substance of our presentation for the next 30 minutes or so. For the most part, this relates to pulling original data, either raw data or maybe processed data, generally coming off of the instrumentation that you have and devices that you have in your laboratories. A huge area of investment for IDBS over the last 4 or 5 years has been what we call data out. Now, historically, this generally meant archiving, right? Storing that data. So we have longevity and guaranteed retention of data for its entire life cycle. But more recently, and you'll hear a common theme we're talking about throughout this week, analytics, right? Using this information, this data for purposes beyond what it was originally captured. And generally that might mean that we're integrating that data to infrastructure or tooling that exists within your landscape. So some examples shown there. And the third broad category, I call it data sync, but really April's given us loads of great examples of this, where we're kind of sharing data either from our platform pushing out to other data systems or workflow systems that your scientists are using to get their job done, or also conversely pulling that data back into our platform. Data link's a great example. So we have all the information the scientists need right at their fingertips in their workflows while they're conducting their work. So while I have you all here together today, I do want to get a little bit of information from you. I've just put one poll in this presentation, and it's right at the start, so we'll be done with this very quickly. That's my gift to you. If you want to do something nice for me, you could just get your phones out, wave them around, grab the QR code. And what I'd like to get from you in this section, just to get a bit of information around these various facets of integration and how important these are to you and your organization. So I suppose what I'm looking you to do is take these 4 cards that are in that form you'll see and just arrange them in order. So what I'd like to see is the one that you think is the most important to you and your organization. Put it at the top. If you haven't seen a form like this before, this little waffle over on the left, you can grab that and move them up and down and get them in order for us. And I'm conscious this is the last presentation of the day, and I don't want to stand between you and your drink, so I'll keep on going really fast. And this will be open for the next hour or so, so there's no immediate pressure to get that done right now. So I think I'm going to start this off by saying integrations is something that's clearly really important to a lot of our customers. And how do we know this? Well, we know it because you tell us all the time. One of the things I've been looking at quite recently is analyzing some of the different sources of information that come in from our customers. This is based on RFP and RFI information that's come through IDBS through 2025. And what we've done in product and strategy is done an analysis of all this data that's coming in we took a cohort of 50 keywords which describe general concepts that are relevant to our business and our customers. And we did a kind of frequency match of those keywords against these documents. And obviously, there's one that kind of dwarfs everything else and doesn't quite fit on the graph, and I'm sure that doesn't surprise anyone. But what was quite surprising is that integration was the 4th most prevalent keyword we found in all those documents. This is something that's really, really important. And it's not just 1 or 2 documents swaying the average. It's found in 50% of all the RFP documents coming through our shop. So hugely important to the organizations who are reaching out to us for support. And I think the other thing that I find quite interesting about this is, Scott mentioned it earlier on, there's a growing number of organizations who really just do integration as their core business model. That's all they do. But this is a question that's coming to IDBS from organizations who are reaching out to us. So I think the pattern that we notice is that there's almost an expectation that us as a vendor of a data management platform, previously based on an ELN, there's an expectation that we're doing these integrations for you. This is something that you want from a single vendor. And it's not simply the frequency with which we get these requests that's increasing, it's also the kind of scale and complexity of these requests. So when I was a consultant many years ago, traveling the world and doing enterprise implementations for our customers, it really was not uncommon for every project to have some kind of element of integration involved. I'm talking about a handful of systems, maybe low single digits, maybe high single digits in extreme cases, but this is kind of over the last 2 to 3 years, we see the number of unique devices that our customers are asking us or expecting us to connect to their platform is kind of rapidly growing up. We're delivering now fairly routinely projects with triple-digit device connection needs in them. I think it's not actually shown on here, but we have had a scenario recently where we were into the thousands of unique devices that we were asked to connect to our platform. So we have to ask ourselves the question, what's driving this change in our customers' behavior? And there's a few things that I think come up all the time. I've seen them in a number of presentations today already, so I'm not expecting this to come as a surprise to you. Aligning it to the lab loop concept, which you'll have seen throughout our first day today, this really ubiquitous, cyclical process in all R&D, irrespective of what scientific domain you're in, this kind of planning, execution, aggregation of your data, and then using that data for some kind of higher value insight generation activity so that you can inform the next iteration of this loop, the next group of experiments that have to be done. So then I'm going to bring up some sound bites, and these are statements. Every one of these has been made to me in the last few weeks or possibly months. The first one, quality, right? Everybody knows that, and quite a lot of our existing customers are still in a process where they're performing manual transcription of data into the platform, either copying numbers off a screen or, in this instance, printing, scanning, importing, and then copying data into a spreadsheet. This is really common. This is not an uncommon scenario. And we know anytime we're asking a human to perform an operation like this, we have the possibility of the introduction of errors. Data integrity, a huge issue that we have to be focusing on improving this. When we get into our data aggregation and alignment phase, this is where I think the throughput, the increasing throughput is the key driving factor here. And this really interesting scenario that was brought to me quite recently, an organization who are working currently at a throughput of around about sort of 5 or 6 plates per analyst per week. And their ambition that they stated to me was to elevate this up to perhaps 30 to 40 plates per analyst per day. So this is not making the loop spin a little bit faster. We're not talking about incremental improvements here. This is really transformational changes in the throughput that this laboratory was looking to accomplish. And the statement that was made that actually the physical process is not the challenge. They have robotics, they have liquid handlers and clever systems that can perform all this work. I mean, there's actually a second customer very recently said something to me along the lines of, we can perform an unlimited number of analyses. Where the bottleneck is in the data, right? Integrating that data into the platform, cleansing it, enriching it, joining it with other data, and getting past that, what Scott described as the AI threshold, so we're actually enabled to go and move forward into this insight generation phase. And this soundbite was one I really wish I'd come up with myself. I did not. Customer in this instance saying, I think it speaks for itself. They want the data to be the fuel that drives the engine. It drives the next iteration of the loop and not simply the exhaust that comes out the back. As well as business drivers, we also find regulatory drivers. So the regulations are constantly being improved, being tightened. This is just one example from Annex 11. The current effective version, honestly, I think sits a little bit on the fence. It gives you advice that if you did want to integrate a system into your platform, it'll tell you, or integrate a data transfer into your platform, it'll tell you how you could go about validating that and say that this is something you should be doing. But in parallel, it also explains if you're manually transcribing data, then here's how to do that as well. The new revision, currently in draft, I think our expectation is this becomes active sometime in the next couple of years, hardens that position very much to say wherever you're moving data from system A to system B, this should be occurring through an integration which is itself validated, effectively eliminating any discussion whatsoever of how to be compliant when making manual transcription steps. So how does this map onto the process as we have it today? Here's our instrument to insight process as it is today in our platform. And I think this aligns quite nicely with that statement a moment ago about the exhaust coming out the end of the process. We know we have instruments. The original source of most of the data that's relevant in platforms like ours comes into the platform generally through a workflow, which in our language is our spreadsheet technology. Some of that data might then make it through to our data backbone tier, and some of the data in our backbone might then be carried forward to insight generation, either within our platform, which we call Polar Insight, or actually maybe more commonly outwards into your infrastructure to be used for some of the cool dashboarding applications that we saw today. I can't see who showed it, but it was really nice. So what do we have in common with all of these instrument integration manifolds that we currently support? Well, one of the ones that bugs me the most is data volume, right? Data volume, the amount of data produced by the instruments we're talking to is on the whole increasing consistently. The spreadsheet tech has itself got a hypothetical limit on how big of a spreadsheet you can build, and that means there's a hypothetical limit on how big of an integration you can do. In reality, what this means is we have to be selective sometimes with what data we pull into our spreadsheet workflows versus what data we effectively discard, we choose to throw away. And if we're discarding data, this is really not supporting our ambition to be moving towards automated predictive analytics, artificial intelligence, or having these huge, high-quality, rich data sets is pretty much mandatory. Our spreadsheet's also extremely good at handling very specific types of data. It's great with rows and columns full of numbers, our data link paradigm, right? Our text file import paradigm. There's also plenty of data types that it doesn't handle so well, and I think that's something that we've recognized for a long time, and we want to improve on that. We've got our little scientist up here. What's that indicating? Well, every time we move something through a spreadsheet, that's a manual operation. Somebody manually has to click the button or do whatever the process is that triggers that ingestion of data into the platform. And if we consider, a moment ago we had our customer looking for a 25 times increase in throughput in their plate-based assays. We have to start really critically thinking about, are we asking the scientists to do the same thing 25 times more often? Or do we have to start thinking about how can we automate this? How can we take some of those steps away from the scientist where it makes sense to do so? Before somebody yells at me, no one's saying we take the scientist out of the loop entirely, right? We know there's still critical parts of the process, but we have to start really thinking which pieces can we automate and which pieces need to be manual. The fourth one's maybe a bit more subtle, but I think it's worth calling out that the majority, if not all, of the key integration manifolds in our platform today are things that have been there a really long time, right? That's a strength in that they're stable, they're well established. Take the instrument reader. interface April mentioned. It's a really well-liked user experience. It's popular. It's evolved over a long period of time. But it's essentially technology we've been carrying with us for quite a long time. Right? The instrument reader is a great example. I think better part of a decade we've had that. It was originally built when we were an on-premise only vendor. So there's definitely scope to start reviewing some of these things and thinking about how can we make this better for the future. And where we meet this quite a lot is things like troubleshooting, right? What if the database polling application goes down, right? What do? You have to go to the server. You have to look at a log file. You have to maybe pull out some horrendous JSON configuration object and try and figure out what it's doing. We can make that better as well. And there's one further piece about our existing manifolds, which I think anyone who's heard me talk about integrations over the last few years, you'll probably get sick of hearing this. But I'm going to go one by one. Cool, they're gone. We typically favor what we call generic interfaces, right? Generic interfaces. This is a phrase you'll hear me saying all the time. What does it actually mean? It's worth spending some time talking about this. What device am I trying to connect here if I'm using this interface? Say it a bit louder. iPhone, right? You could even tell me which model maybe. Is this a generic interface? Not in the slightest, right? We have some vendors out there who choose to have a closed system, right? They have their standards for whatever reasons. They want to go with this. And that might make life a little bit more difficult if you want to try and connect to that system. Same question again for this guy. What am I connecting to here? Bing. Oh, you guys are brilliant, right? I thought we'd be out of energy by this stage in the day, but that was much easier than I thought. Could be absolutely anything. Could be a hard drive, could be a headset, could be a string of fairy lights, who knows? This is a generic interface, and wherever we're building interfaces into our platform, this is the philosophy we like to follow, right? We don't want to be building hundreds and hundreds of dedicated tools that connect to specialist little bits that might be used once or twice. Wherever we're building something new into our platform, we're always looking for this generic solutions where we can give you the tool once that solves hundreds or potentially thousands of problems. Right? Pause for breath. Let's move to the future. So today, we're in a position where we're able to launch a completely new, a complete evolution to the way that we are doing instrument integrations on our platform. There's a very minor but important architectural rearrangement, as you can see here. We eliminate our bottlenecks around the spreadsheet by going directly to our data backbone product, right? So this enables us to work with essentially unlimited size data sets. And we'll get onto just a second some of the nice things we're doing with that up front. It enables us to work with more data types and formats. We're no longer constrained by what the spreadsheet can and can't handle. One of the elements in our data backbone that we have already, we call it our data science engine, launched 2-3 years ago, is a tool for the kind of scripted manipulation and processing of data in a compliant way within that backbone tech. So it's taking in the data, slicing, dicing, cleansing, enriching, whatever operation is required, and then making that data or some subset of it available for the workflow engine within our platform. And on here, I've called out the spreadsheet engine specifically, but by architecting ourselves this way, we could put anything we want up here, any future generation of our workflow tool or any other platform module that might have a need to pull that data in from instruments or indeed any other data source that's pushing data into the platform. And of course, the consumption of that data, the driving of that data out towards our consumption tier, our analytics, our AI, whatever the future holds down here, that's more or less unchanged. It gives us a greater milestone towards automation. So now we no longer have to require the user to go in here and manually find information as and when it's ready, right? We can start to think about automating some of these pipelines, bringing that data in, manipulating it, and getting it ready for just that critical phase when the user actually needs to be reviewing or analyzing or doing something with that data. And our final one, as a new product a new product component. Everything we've done is based on obviously latest and greatest cloud technology. It's cloud native tech designed specifically to make the maintenance, the configuration, and the ongoing in-life management of these integrations as easy as possible. So the ability to look into the on-premise environment and see, are these things actually healthy? Are they still working? Are they generating error logs? What do those logs say? And being able to do all that through our cloud platform. Oh, can I get you? Yeah, please hold just for now. Don't start. So that's all well and good at the level of the platform, right? We've effectively added this completely new integration framework to our product. That's now live and available right now. But honestly, who cares about a framework? What's the value in that? We didn't want to just create this as some abstract concept that we can talk about in a presentation, but doesn't actually solve any real customer problems. So we're launching this along with an initial use case, and that initial use case is based around downstream protein purification. And this decision was made based on, again, a pretty lengthy piece of analysis we did in the product strategy organization that indicated this was, of all the integration requests coming in from our customers, this was the biggest gap, right? And I think this is the way we like to work. We're never going to try, again, I don't see Scott in the room. He mentioned this morning, we're never going to try and be a TetraScience or one of these organizations who are pure play integration vendors. But we do need to be able to address the biggest challenges that our customers are bringing to us, the most frequent use cases that we see. And I guess that statement's kind of a call to action to make us aware. Let us know what are the challenges you're meeting, what are the problems you want us to solve, and we can work on that with you. This particular scenario was actually built in partnership with one customer who came to us at the exact right moment with the exact problem we were trying to solve. And we said, why not partner? Let's work together. And we did this along with them. Now, I have very limited time today, so I'm not going to go into great depth on this at all. This is nothing more than a teaser for the real event, which I think is probably tomorrow. Yeah, Bryce is nodding. So Bryce and Kayla from our product enablement team will go into a super deep dive tomorrow of our whole downstream protein purification workflow. There's a few bits and pieces I do want to call out, though, with the time I've got. So can you start us up? Thanks. Now, consistent with most of our integration manifolds we have today, we've put it directly in the spreadsheet engine, right? So we're going to launch this through the instruction card. So as a user, this is not going to be any different to anything they've seen before. We have some new pieces which come flying in from the side in this kind of sliding panel interface, which incidentally is itself an integration point. You can put whatever you want in there if you want to extend out your platform. You just pause for 1 second, sorry. All right, so the spreadsheet sliding tool that comes in, it gives us some options. One of the things it allows us to do in this scenario, we're going to go and connect to the data source that we actually need to pull data from. In our downstream purification workflow, that's ACTA chromatography systems, right? A really ubiquitous tool which is used in basically every downstream processing lab we encounter, managed by a software system called Unicorn from our partners at Cytiva. In this particular example, we're going to connect out to that. We're going to connect to our Unicorn data system. We've actually skipped a few stages, but don't worry about that too much. You can catch the full story tomorrow. We're going to log into the Unicorn software with a username, password. We're going to explore data that's in there, find the run that we want, and pull that back into our platform. So yeah, just let that run a little bit longer. Now, all the data that we're pulling in, although we're driving this through the spreadsheet engine, is actually coming directly into the data backbone. And one of the things one of the challenges we met with Unicorn data is these are big data sets. Some of you might have already integrated Unicorn into your platform. And in fact, we used to have a solution that did this, that was something we maintained and sold. And it sort of worked, but it made us jump through a few hoops and wasn't perhaps the most elegant user flow that we could have done. So now we're pulling the data directly into our backbone. We're then partitioning that. We're taking just a certain subset of it that we require, and we're going to pull that back into our spreadsheet, and you'll see the tables do their thing, and numbers will appear, and everything's good. But as well as doing that, we're not putting 100% of all the data coming off of Unicorn into the spreadsheet, because it doesn't need to be there. It doesn't support the end user's workflow in any way, but we are putting it into our data backbone, which means it's there and available for our insight and analytics layer to start doing things like creating interactive dashboards and so on. Critically, this one for Unicorn data, cross-run comparison. How do you compare 2, 10, 50, 100 chromatography runs in one place? You simply couldn't do that in the spreadsheet. It would kill it. But our insight analytics platform is kind of exactly what it's built to do. And the final bit I do want to show before I move on, which probably will not be in Bryce's presentation, this is really around the admin, right? So if you're the person who has to set up, sorry, let me pause for one more second. The person who has to set up and configure these integrations on your platform, we want that process to be as simple as possible, right? We know flexibility, dynamically evolving workflows are normal, right? The standard. And the process of adding a new integration or a new piece of kit, a new piece of hardware that you've acquired into the system, that needs to be simple too, so that you can be dynamic and evolve as your instrument landscape also evolves. So yeah, just keep running, thanks. So we have a new UI that we can use to add new data sources into the platform. At the current time, we have just one thing in this list. It's one use case based on Unicorn. It's going through a generic interface based on OPC. It's talking to your devices on-premise through a dedicated integration gateway, so a device that we can run on your on-premise environment, and that bridges the on-premise to cloud divide in a totally new way, which kind of elevates us beyond some of the legacy on-premise tools that we've had for many, many years. And there's various other bits of config we can do here, like choosing how the user logs into Unicorn in this instance. And also, once the data comes into Polar, who should have access to it, right? Do we want to limit this just to one specific group of users, one lab, or do we want to make that available to absolutely everyone? So there's a bunch of configuration options we can do here. Like I say, this is our first iteration. We're really excited to have it out, but this is kind of just the beginning. At the moment, we've got our OPC Unicorn data sources. I suppose what would make me happy is this time next year, I'm talking to you, and this box is all full of different things that we've been able to connect to our platform. Okay, I'm getting a time warning now, so I'm going to keep going. Please come to Bryce and Kayla's session tomorrow to get a deep dive into the actual science behind this. I just wanted to show you some of the kind of background technical stuff. I'm going to stop. I'm going to summarize. So, yeah, we've added a complete new integration framework to our platform that's now launched. This is our first iteration of that based on a single connector focused around that Cytiva Unicorn downstream protein purification use case. Aligned with our standard integration philosophy, we're using generic standards wherever possible. This is using OPC. So OPC itself opens the door for us to connect to a whole range of different instruments and data systems which are of interest to us. My ask to you again is keep talking to us, keep letting us know what you want so we know how we can continue to evolve these pieces as we move forward. And yeah, there's very little point in us creating just a connector by itself. What we're trying to do is get you the outcomes you want. So as well as the connector, we're also launching a completely new version of our workflow solution around this, the template that drives it, and also the insight, the data analytics that really get the maximum value out of the data that tool is pulling into the platform. If I have any time.
You have a few minutes,
Thank you very much. We'll take some questions.
Any questions for Craig? We could take one or two. Jennifer.
Want to be the only one? Does anybody else have it? Sure. I think you need to start and then they'll get
Okay.
What was my question? So the data comes. Where do we map what the data is from where it's coming to the analytics platform that we're doing so that we can utilize that data? Does that make sense? It's a long day.
Do you mean where do you do it or how do you do it? Okay, so at the moment, you don't, is the simple answer. It's iteration 1, it's version, I mean, this is a kind of brand new stuff we've just created. And to be totally honest with you, it is pretty much locked down to just that unicorn OPC workflow. Now, that's not what we want to do, right? The next step for me and the teams that I work with is to build that into a completely generic tool. So there's 3 different areas we need to genericize this. The first one is when you talk to the OPC data source, what do you want from there? Right? At the moment, we've told it what to go and pull out of Unicorn. Now, that's something that you need to be able to configure. And that will be, again, through that kind of data source manager admin panel that I was just showing a second ago. The second one is which of the data do you want to put to the workflow versus which of the data do you want to put to the backbone itself? That's very, very hot topic. There's probably a bunch of people in the room, in the building right now who are working out exactly how that should be done. So watch this space. That's going to come very, very soon. And the third one is, once you have that data in the backbone, how do you elevate that up to workflows as and when you need it? So again, conceptually, since we spoke about it already today, not going to be a million miles away from what we call data link today, but I'm not going to prejudice it by saying we're not using any of the old technology, but I think what you do with data link, the kind of click, fetch, bring the data into your workflow is kind of where our minds are at on that. But that's, ask me again in 3 months, I'll give you a good answer.
That was good, though. Thank you.
I think we can take one more question for Craig. Does anybody have a question? No, everything must have been really clear. Thank you very much, Craig.
Yes.